Teachers of Reddit, what was the most annoying thing you ever had to deal with in class? I train staff for mental health work in the state of Florida. The most annoying thing by far about teaching was when they were tested. In the end, I was expected to let them all cheat so they all pass because we need to get them through training. State facilities are crap. I feel like this is slightly below the Florida standard. I worked for a private religious school and I caught a girl cheating in my 7th grade social studies class. I passed it up to my principal for discipline and was told that the mom was difficult to deal with, so I should just let it go because I didn't have pictures of her cheating. AKA they didn't want to lose the tuition money. So then she just came into my class very smug for the rest of the year because she knew she could get away with anything. High school teacher here. I teach English as a second language. When I only just started teaching, there was this YOLO swag craze going on. I had this student who would just lean back on his chair and the only thing he would do is say YOLO swag. This is a 15-year-old boy I'm talking about. I teach at a normal school and this boy had no special needs indications whatsoever. He was just acting like an idiot. In my country we score tests from 1-10, 1 being the worst and 10 being the best. This kid's parents came to see me at a parent-teacher meeting and demanded that I explained why the frick their innocent little boy had got a 1 on his test. They were sure he must have written down some correct answers, so do explain. Luckily, I always keep all the tests the students make for exactly these kind of situations. I triumphantly showed them the test he made. He had drawn a huge plankton SpongeBob with a text balloon saying, "Surprise, surprise, YOLO swag." This mom looked at it and asked me whether this was a joke. I said no, and let's talk about your child's ridiculous behavior now because I refuse to teach him when he acts out like this. I can tell you, it was a long year with this kid in class and I was genuinely happy that I didn't see him in my classes again in the following years. He coincidentally wasn't in the classes I taught, didn't leave school or anything. I love my job and I can say I'm a good teacher who loves her students, but this kid really tested my sanity throughout that year. Clearly you have taught the infamous YOLO swaggins from the Fellowship of the Bling. On my first day teaching a class of 6 and 7-year-olds, one came up to me and said, "Miss, are you a teenager or a child?" I had a teacher, in her first year out of uni, come to the first day of class essentially wearing our uniform, white blouse and black skirt. Since we were all 17, and she was around 23, there wasn't much difference aside from the lanyard she had around her neck. I never wore that outfit again, since she clearly had a lot of confused students. A chain of British education secretaries who decided that any 11-year-old who doesn't pass their year 6 exams is a failure. That amazing progress you have made, failed. Special educational needs, failed. You've only spoken English for a year, failed. Nothing promotes lifelong learning like being branded a failure at age 11. Apparently there's going to be a move back towards looking at progress rather than just end of year scores. I have my fingers crossed. I teach in a fairly deprived area and our kids make amazing progress, way more than expected, but still don't reach the end of year expectation because they come in so behind. It would make such a difference for them. Asking questions not on topic. I have this one student this year that does this and it's driving me insane. I'm teaching a unit on Holocaust literature and every day he asks questions about other things in the middle of directions. These were this past week. What are plane tickets to Brazil? Can you overdose on cold medicine? Have you ever been to Japan? My favorite anime is JoJo Bizarre Adventure. What's the classes? And every single time I call on him he states I have a question. My question is a little off topic but I think that's okay because I'm curious. My question is, I've stopped calling on him. Not a regular teacher, but I do teach several different styles of youth martial arts. I've had to ban Fortnite dances. It was easy to do though. I told them they can do whatever emotes they want if they've got more total wins than me. My 2 solo wins in 7 seasons isn't winning any battles. But thanks to carries from friends I've got a couple hundred squad wins. Kids don't know and it stops me having to see dabbing or flossing. Nice. I had to ban Juju on that beat and several other juvenile songs for no other reason than they annoyed the crap out of me. I told them it was a demand by the principal and parents. Memory issues. So much of education is dependent on learning one thing. remembering it and applying lesson to the next thing. There are some students who just have crap memories. Nothing is ever learned because they can't remember the first step or what you just told them 5 minutes ago. So it is an endless class period of telling them the first step, looking after the other students in class, coming back around to them, and they are completely lost as to what to do. I don't even know what to do as an educator in these cases. I lecture undergraduate students. I would say it's the sheer lack of enthusiasm and interest they exhibit in seminars, and it's costing them about £30k. One student quit that the assignment I gave them could be solved with doing Google searches, to which I replied, you do realize that higher education is entirely voluntary? You don't even have to do that if you don't want to. The thing is, they almost definitely don't realize. Everyone just assumes they'll go to college after high school. That's why colleges are full of high school style students. Once my students decided to start a strike in my class because I wouldn't let them play games. They chanted strike until I gave them a pop test. Students teacher here. I was teaching freshman bio at my old high school. This happened last winter. I had a student that would dress in all black and he would always draw all over himself. Crap like satanic stars, Nazi symbols, edgelord crap. He had the Lorax fanfiction for his background on his school laptop. No joke. He would cuss at me, never do his work. One time I handed him a packet and he threw it in the trash right in front of me and his special needs aide. I was a pretty chill teacher the kid threw a party and got me a card and cookies on my last day, so I know I wasn't that bad. He would always come to school with bandage wrap or a brace you can get at Walgreens, come up with some story of what happened which were totally not true, such as, he fell off a 3-story building doing BMX tricks, twisted his knee beating up his neighbor for trying to break into his house, hurt himself by crashing his mom's stolen car after a high-speed chase by police. Yep, sure. Student here. I had a classmate like that back in high school. Maybe you were my teacher. He came to class with bruises around his neck, like someone tried to hang him. He claimed they were hickeys from his girlfriend, but they terrified the whole class. A girl and I actually asked him if he was alright. We were concerned someone tried to choke him or something. Parents. The answer is now and forever will be parents. I taught 7th grade English for a while and had a kid named Alfred. He was smart as a whip but obviously was in need of some special education services. I'm not a doctor, but he was either on the spectrum or had some sort of EBD. Huge outbursts, impulsivity, mood swings. Alfred happened to be black, and his parents were a school counselor and a social worker. To their credit, they know black boys are overlabeled and are often in sped when they don't need to be. But Alfred really needed to be. He wasn't receiving the support he needed to be successful because his parents were too proud or concerned with perception. I'm not a teacher, but my mom is, and she would absolutely tell you that it's the parents of crappy kids. The kids are little buttholes, and then the parents come and refuse to take responsibility. Well, Timmy wouldn't do that. Well, he did, and you are enabling him. I've been a daycare teacher for about 4.5 years now, and let me tell you, the most annoying thing I have to deal with is parents who swear up and down that their child never does anything wrong and that they're an angel. I deal with those on a daily basis. Sometimes they don't provide medical records and we end up finding out that they're delayed or actually autistic. I'm not trained for that sort of thing, so I constantly deal with kids who lash out because of overstimulation or because they still act like they're 3 when they're actually 6. Glad I put my 2 weeks in. Not a teacher but a hobby group leader. I had a kid threaten me to say to my boss that I touched them, only because I didn't let them run around in the computer room. I used to teach high school freshmen, 9th grade. One day during passing time, 2 of my well-behaved students came into the class sort of nervously talking and looking at me. I zeroed in on this and asked what was going on. Kid, there's something inappropriately shaped in the hallway. I of course think this means someone drew a dong on a locker or something. Awesome. Go out into the hall and there is a hot pink dildo sitting in the middle of the walkway. I ask the kids where it came from. We opened a locker and it just fell out. Sure, that seems believable. You just happened to open that one locker, and the laws of gravity just happened to fail at that moment. Got it. The bell rings. I send the kids to class and tell them to work on their warm-up. I grabbed the largest wad of paper towels I could, wrapped the thing up, and took it down to the administrator's office. There was a kid there talking to the secretary, so I sort of stepped over to the side. She eventually comes over. Secretary, looking kind of worried, is everything okay? Me, is administrator here? I found this in the hall. Secretary, blinking in astonishment. That is a dildo. Me, yes, it is. Secretary, hang on, I'll grab him. I go into admin's office. He cracks up laughing, empties out a plastic bag and takes the thing. Awesome. Not my problem anymore. I head to the bathroom, wash my hands thoroughly, and go back to class. Me. Okay. Did everyone get their warm-up done? Students. No. We've pretty much been talking about it since you left. Okay. No problem. I get everyone working, collect their warm-ups, and start going over the problems. And that's when I lost it. Started laughing hysterically and trying to hide it behind a piece of paper. The students are all giggling and saying she's laughing. She thinks it's funny. Except, of course, for the one oblivious kid in the back of the room who kept asking me to explain. Yeah, kid. That's not gonna happen. Get a classmate to share. I think I washed my hands about 20 times that day. I've had a few, some common and some irregular, so I'll just make a list. For context, I teach English in a non-English speaking country. Not all of these are in-class things, but I figured I'd write them anyway. 1. When you explain something to the student, as if they have questions, they say no. 2 minutes later, it comes up again, they ask the same question again, you explain again, etc., etc. The cycle continues for an hour wherein they absorb nothing. 2. Hands in pants. Hands in nose, hands in butt, then they want a high five. 3. Putting no effort into writing legibly, then being surprised they can't read their own writing. 4. You didn't give me homework. Yes I did. I explained it to you in class and showed you examples. I sticker noted it. I highlighted it. I had you write it on the homework sheet I made for you because you always say this. You had homework. 5. Why aren't you giving my child homework? I am. If your child is lying to you and saying they don't have any, that's an issue you need to deal with. If you want me to tell you what the homework is, please give me your contact or come in to check on your kid's progress after class. I'll be happy to talk to you. 6. Unrealistic expectations. So many parents want their children to suddenly be intermediate level speakers in a few months with only one lesson a week, and then pressure the kid unfairly. 7. Screaming. Kids screaming because they think it's funny. All class. I get it. Kids are kids, but when you're not allowed to use their native language to discipline them and they're beginning speakers, it creates a pretty maddening situation. Not the fault of kids. I love teaching kids, so most stuff can be viewed in a positive or humorous way, but these are some that get on my nerves. Overall, though, it's really fun. 8. I have had a parent do the kids' homework for private lessons, so no grade pressure, multiple times. She was surprised when I asked her to stop. Thanks to you Wonking 509's comment for reminding me. I photograph my "you didn't give me homework" students next to the homework assignment written on the board. I have a kid that every time something negative is said to him, which is always cause he's loud and obnoxious, he will call you a Jake Pollard. It's nothing to get bent out of shape about, but frick is it annoying to hear that 20x a day. The other one is when a kid raises their hand and you call on them and they let off with "I have a question." Fricking duh. I'm a high school science teacher. The little most annoying thing that makes my insides boil are teenage boys who think they know more about my content area than me and talk in a condescending manner. To be fair, the type of student it tends to be are pretty socially awkward and might not know they are being condescending. I don't know if you've ever heard of XXXXXXX, and I am a younger female teacher. I was not an education major, but studied 2 science majors in college. Like, bro, not only have I passed high school, but I have 2 degrees in science. Not a teacher, I am a private tutor at a human-like institution. We give out worksheets to the kids then grade them, and one of the kids will do as many as possible as fast as possible and hide them all until the very end, so I have to grade 20 pages while also covering 3 other kids. That's dedication. This is a small annoying this but dumb stuff like leaving their empty bottles everywhere, rulers on the floor, chairs untucked. I never used to give instructions for stuff like this because I thought it was common sense. But nope, now it's all empty bottles in the bin, rulers to the front, chairs tucked in, stand behind your desk. I got tired of cleaning up after each class every day. Computer teacher here. For some reason kids love using their headphones. Every single goddamn class. I teach 7 diff classes a day 5x a week. Asks me can we use our headphones. It drives me nuts. High school teacher here. My students range in age from 14 to 18. I teach this one young lady whose mother calls or emails her teachers multiple times a day about ridiculous stuff, including tips on how to teach our classes. If we don't respond to her emails within an hour, she resends the email to ask us if we got it. Heaven forbid this bright young lady demonstrate some self-advocacy and speak up for herself. The extreme communication is a terrible distraction, and I can't wait until the end of the school year. I teach blacksmithing. The most annoying thing are the wannabes that have watched Forged in Fire and want to make an elaborate sword in the first class before they have even swung a hammer. Okay, to be fair though, they associate you with awesome sword crafting, which you should totally play up. A student secretly called their mom during class to tattle to her that I refused to let them use the bathroom. A student was caught by his peers masturbating during class. A fist fight ensued. A student threw a tantrum when they couldn't find their assignment to turn in. They threw things around my classroom and cussed me out in front of other kids. One student witness later told me that they were prepared to physically intercede because they worried their tantrum throwing peer would turn their aggression on me. Later, the tantrum thrower's mother told me she'd once called the cops on her kid because she'd feared for her safety. A parent emailed me to demand they actually use that word, that I immediately update their child's grade because they'd handed in a missing and late assignment. A parent requesting a grade change 1 year later because the C their kid had earned 1/4 in my class prevented them from qualifying for a university scholarship. I'm a student, but this gets on my nerves as much or maybe even more than the teacher. In my country, grade 12 students have to take national exam and can take either the science or social exam where the sum of the subjects are cut out. Science only have history while other social subjects are cut out. But because of this, along with the fact that all social teachers in grade 12 are far from strict, most of the students simply ignore the social teachers when they teach. Like, at least try to listen or act respectful instead of talking and using your phone while they teach. Not a teacher but a student. I find teachers hate this. The class will find something trendy to say, a word, noise, saying, etc., and repeat it constantly. The problem is this will fill the room as students scream it at the tops of their lungs. This completely stops the lesson as the teacher has to deal with it. This is annoying because I've had times where we don't even get past the starter of the lesson because the teacher just tries to control the class. Most teachers aren't up to date with what's trendy and therefore will have no clue what's going on. The teacher has very little to stop them, and I feel my education is poorer because I never have full lessons. They never stop. The teacher can say anything and the students will ignore them. See, I am a teacher and this is exactly why I keep myself up to date with kids' trends and I use it in my lessons. One of two things happens. The moment I do it, they either laugh and become more engaged, or I've made it uncool for them so they don't do it at annoying times. Either way is a win for me. Parents who send in gift cards on Teacher Appreciation Week but send disrespectful kids every day who show zero remorse or change in behavior once you contact home. I had a girl, K4, who refused to stop sneaking up behind me with pencils and poking me in the butt. She thought it was the funniest thing ever. I used to tell my students that in the real world that is assault, and they can be brought up on charges. They were like 10, but it still seemed to scare them enough to stop touching me. Last year I was in a classroom that did not have windows or air conditioning. It was built to be a counselor's office, but they forced 23 students at a time in there. 23 is an amazing class size in most circumstances, but when you are shoving them into the room so closely together that they literally have to climb over each other to exit, it gets fairly hazardous. I teach middle school. The smell was eye-watering. I would bring in electric fans, but all they would do is waft the scent through the room, especially if they had just come from phys ed. That day, I did not have a teacher desk because I moved it out of the room to make space for the bodies. I did not have a chair because again, I didn't want to take up more space than necessary. That was almost fine because I rarely sit to teach, but it was so hard to maneuver up and down the rows of desks that were crammed together. The administration was constantly touting the importance of letting the students get up and move around in stations, yet they never took into consideration that I could never really have more than 2 kids up at once without creating a hazard. But for all of that annoyance, the kids were amazing. They sweat through every analysis. They never once complained about not being able to change the format of the room. They were constantly engaged. They reminded each other to put on deodorant before they entered the room. And they were always polite when they had to climb over their peers to go use the restroom, or go to the trash can to throw something out. It was a bizarre year of 90-minute blocks of the kids rooted in their seats, and they still look happy and enthusiastic to be there. I'm no longer in that room, but I am now a floating teacher. I go from one classroom to another, a nomad, essentially. This is because we have more classes than classrooms in our school, and teachers exchange rooms when they go on planning. How's that for annoying? I guess I have some crazy parent and student stories, but really, this situation has been the thing that has annoyed me the most. I had a 3rd grader who set his ringtone to just an audio recording of himself screaming. He would get other students to call his phone in the middle of class. In hindsight, it was actually pretty funny, but in the middle of class it was obnoxious and disruptive. I'm an assistant English language teacher in Japan. One of my first year junior high school classes is the absolute worst, always loud and often intentionally disruptive. As I don't technically work for the school, I'm not supposed to yell at or discipline students, and the Japanese teacher usually pretends it isn't happening. On the worst day I can remember, a snarl of children in the back of the room had moved their desks together into a cluster. It was a hot summer day, and they had snatched one of the cooling fans and placed it on their desks. They would shove little balls of paper and other stuff to launch it across the room. They also had a lights off policy, which they constantly demanded from us at the front of the room and vigorously enforced. Their leader would patrol the side of the room, closing the curtains and switching the lights off unless I stood near the switch, guarding it as best I could without physically stopping her. She also made sure all the curtains were drawn. Somehow just enough natural light filtered through to see pretty comfortably, possibly from the hallway, but the cacophony usually prevents any meaningful learning from taking place. Towards the end of class, I noticed that the window had been left open. One girl, who has genuinely been a good student, had the misfortune of sitting next to the window. The curtain was blowing right in her face. So, I went over to open the curtain at her spot and opened it up just enough where it wasn't blowing in her face. The ringleader of the lights off, fan cannon crew actually came over to close the curtain. I opened it back up and stood there for the remaining 2 minutes of class. At one point, I asked the teacher why not fan off instead, gesturing towards the weaponized one in the back. He actually told me because then they will not be cool. Their 2nd year teacher is an absolute badass and doesn't tolerate that crap. She's my only hope for those kids. You explain something. Ask them if they have any questions. No reply, everyone is ready to start working. Few seconds later a student asks a question about literally what you just explained. You try to be patient and answer him. Maybe he was too shy to ask before. A second student asks the same question. A third one, etc. As a middle school math teacher there are 2 men at a list. I literally sit at my desk and yell "you are annoying me" several times a day. Currently, I have a student that hisses and makes high-pitched screams at other students. It makes my ears bleed. No matter how many times I reprimand her I still get hissed at. She wears ears. Enough said. I am also currently pregnant and students like to bend close to my belly and scream at my baby trying to talk at it. Middle school is the definition of annoying. Other teachers. I worked in a city 7th and 8th grade. I started in January and was already their 6th teacher. I was held a knife point, had my wallet stolen and discarded in an abandoned house, and cried more times than I could count. But the worst part was the other teachers. They sat at lunch crap talking all the kids, making fun of clothes, hair, smell, Home life. It was really awful to hear them completely degrade and write off all the students. Senior teachers pulled rank through the union and bullied everyone. I stopped eating lunch with them. I basically stayed in my classroom from start to finish. The kids were untrained wildebeests, but the teacher were malicious twats. I had a senior who went through phases. He would first roll into class late or missing equipment. Next he would annoy the kids next to him, try and start conversations with them and be disruptive. Then it was time for him to complain physics was boring and I wasn't teaching them anything, and to try and sneak some food out of his pockets. Finally, he would complain that he didn't understand any of the questions and why wouldn't I help him. The ballbag wanted to do engineering, but his shot grades mean he is still working at Macca's. I teach in a juvenile detention center. These kids are sometimes the funniest and most creative, but without a doubt the smartest and most manipulative human beings I've ever met. I am not a teacher, but my friend is. He told of an instance where a student turned on one of the gas spigot's tapes during a science class, then proceeded to use this as a stationary flamethrower, holding a cigarette lighter in the gas stream to act as the pilot light. This annoyed him greatly. I was working as an education assistant at a primary school a few years ago. One of my year 3s decides to pull down his pants and urinate on the 2 girls sat next to him while the class was doing silent reading. I studied to be a high school teacher, but had to settle for a job in middle school, heck, 8th grade more specifically. One of my students this year is the type who has to say outrageous crap out loud constantly to get reactions from everyone. She is also sexually confused and tries to be flirtatious with everyone, including me. Being a young, male teacher, this has caused me enormous amounts of anxiety. Here are some of the things she has said done so far this year. Math class during the first week of school. She raises her hand to ask what I suppose will be a pertinent question. Instead, she asks me if anyone has ever told me that my shoulders are weirdly shaped. They aren't. At least I don't think so. Asks me what color my eyes are, and when I proceed to answer green, she says no they aren't. She then walks to the front of the class and puts her face inches from mine to learn that they are in fact green. Uncomfortable to say the least. That same week, she told me my jeans were too wrinkled and again walked up to the front of the class to show me where exactly the wrinkles were. Tried touching my pants. Had to shut that down very quickly. Pulled out an entire makeup kit during a test and was nonchalantly powdering her face when I asked her what the heck she was doing. Answered calmly that she had a party to go to that night and didn't have time to get ready later. Constantly oscillates between being a lesbian with a girlfriend, 100% done with boys, and gushing over a new guy every second week. Once proclaimed to the class that she would not give head to a guy until the second date. Also showed up to class this week with a second bra over her first one in an attempt to make her breasts look bigger. Spent the whole morning flaunting herself in front of the class every chance she got. Then complains about the unfair dress code in our school. No one has ever been dress coded as far as I can remember. She has a laptop to help her write in class as an accommodation. Just yesterday, I had to confiscate it because she was doing some online shopping and telling everybody within earshot that she just had to get these loafers. These are just a few of the many stories I could recount about this girl. Sad, because she is very intelligent, but is constantly going for the edgy, over-the-top personality to get the attention she so desperately craves. I currently have a student who makes it his mission to shout sexually inappropriate things during class. That is, me. So Rosaline isn't interested in Romeo and that makes him miserable. Child, is it because she likes BBC? Me. I'm sorry, what? Child, she won't go with Romeo because she only likes BBC. Me. Are you kidding me? I'm the least prudish person in the world, but no one would say that is school appropriate. This is just one of many examples. I personally love BBC NewsHour, very educational. Had this one kid in my class who had muscular dystrophy or something along those lines. He had to leave 5 minutes early from every class because he couldn't navigate the corridors with loads of students in them. He was also allowed to take a buddy with him. Every time he left, one of the students would stick their hand up. Why doesn't he get to leave early? You know why, you little crap, he's been in the same class as you for literally years. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.